my fellow weirdos, welcome back to my channel. For today's video I am doing the Library of Horrors book tag created by Alex's Library. She's the original creator and she very kindly tagged me, so thank you so much, Alex. I'll put the link to her original video down below, but let's just jump into this book tag, shall we? So first of all, the prompt is dead doesn't mean gone, horror book with a ghost hunting. And my immediate thought was Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. I make no bones about being a huge fan of classic Gothic horror and classic Gothic literature. And Shirley Jackson is just the epitome of all that. She's one of my favourite authors of all time, and this is one of my favourite books of all time. It is about a professor who wants to explore the concept of paranormal activity and ghosts, and so he gets a group of relative strangers together to go to a haunted property known as Hill House, to stay there and to kind of record and from a very clinical sort of perspective, record the events and how it impacts them psychologically. Our main protagonist, who is called Eleanor, she is delighted to take up that invitation because it means that she gets out of a very difficult family situation. She basically had been looking after the mother for a very long time who was sick, and as a result had never really lived a life, and this is her opportunity to get away and to do something. She is joined by Dr. Montague, who created the invitation. Then we have Theodora, an artistic sensitive, Luke, heir to the house. And you have a couple of staff at the house as well who pop in to create like some nice exposition and creepiness. It is a fantastic book. It is incredibly well written, and it really does that wonderful line of ambiguity between genuine paranormal activity and mental health issues. I can't recommend it enough, and I also cannot recommend the Netflix adaptation enough, which does a fantastic job. Whilst completely having a different story, it does perfectly encapsulate the themes, the atmosphere, the ideas in this book. So yeah, that's my first pick. Okay, second is a Lullaby. Tell us about a horror book with a creepy child. Again, I went straight to classics and I've come with The Turn of the Screw with Henry James. We have a housekeeper, a nanny, who has been asked by a rich gentleman to go and look after his nephew and niece in this secluded house in the middle of the English countryside. She goes, looks after the kids, immediately is taken with them. It's just her, the housekeeper, and the children, but she becomes aware that there's something wrong. She believes that there are malevolent spirits in the house, one the former driver and another the former nanny, both of whom had a very salacious and illicit affair, and she believes that they're trying to take the children or do something with the children. And the children themselves in this book, whilst a lot of the time are kind of quite sweet, there's just moments where they're just kind of a little bit creepy. And again, this sort of walks that line of ambiguity between, you know, is this a genuine haunting? Are these ghosts malevolent? Are they real? Or is the nanny having some kind of nervous breakdown? And I love any kind of exploration of mental health issues through horror. So another great recommendation and another fantastic piece of classic Gothic horror. Next up, we have You Are Invited, a horror book with a creepy cult. I went for A Doctor Sleep by Stephen King. Now, I know it's not strictly a cult, but the True Knot to me definitely have a lot of cult-like features. They have a leader in whom they completely trust. They have their like mantras about the True Knot that they like speak and say. They have rituals when they're initiating someone and when they are killing someone. They are dangerous, and they take what they do, you know, to an almost religious extreme. The experiences that they have when they eat The Shining from children, it's like a whole like religious sort of experience for them. And yeah, so to me they are cult-like and tick the box, but if you're unfamiliar with the storyline, essentially the True Knot are sort of like vampires. They're like shining vampires. It's a sequel to The Shining. Danny's all grown up and he encounters a little girl who shines brighter than anyone that he has ever encountered. Unfortunately, that's put her straight on the radar of this cult-like vampire pack called the True Knot, who kill children and suck the shining out of them to live forever. And Danny has to try to save her. It's a great read, fantastic book, and another amazing film adaptation with Ewan McGregor. I absolutely loved it, and it is definitely my favourite Stephen King adaptation there's ever been. So, fantastic read and really good movie. Okay, at number 4 we have Devil's Advocate, a book with a morally grey protagonist. I can't find my copy, but I went for Exquisite Corpse by Poppy.Z.Brite. This is, the protagonist is a murderer. And not just a murderer, but a necrophiliac murderer. And, yeah, you know, you shouldn't really like him, but, I mean, the book is all from his perspective, and you kind of end up, yeah, you kind of do. And it's about him finding a partner who kind of has similar proclivities. So it's like a book about their relationship and the exploration of that and the terrible things that they do. And it's a really good read. I thoroughly recommend it. Not for the squeamish though, because it is super effed up. Okay. Next we have 5, It's You, It's Me, It's Us, a horror book whose protagonist you relate to. My copy of this is in my bedroom and I can't be bothered to get it, but I went for My Best Friend's Exorcist by Grady Hendrix. I know that the girl is a teenager in that, and I don't relate to a teenager at all anymore. Maybe back then, but this is about a girl who has this one best friend who she like adores and who gets her completely and is like the one person in her life that she can completely rely on. And she's going through all the normal sort of horrible teenage stuff when her friend becomes possessed by the devil and nobody will believe her and she's the only one trying to save her. And that's sort of the concept of the book. But I just really related hard to the protagonist because I was that awkward girl who didn't really like the way that she looked, who wouldn't have got through school without having a particular friend in, you know, well, I was lucky I had a couple of friends that I could rely on, but also having other friends who seemed like they were good friends, but really, really weren't. And I guess I've been reading that recently and I kind of related to it because I related it back to my teenage years, if that makes sense. So that's what I went with. Okay, 6, Till Death Do Us Part, a horror book with a romantic plot. I know that this is what Alex went for, but it was in my immediate thought as soon as I saw the little... Nearly dropped it. As soon as I saw the little question panel come up on her page, and it is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This looks at all sorts of kind of like romantic relationships in all forms, whether they're sort of transactional, where you're marrying somebody because of like a status type situation, if it's incredibly passionate, if it's controlling, domestically abusive, and then there's this just good old-fashioned relationship there, which is like a true one that emerges out of friendship and grows to become love. And whilst it's not centered around the relationships, those are all on the peripherals and they form the connections between the main characters. But it is about a young girl who her cousin's acting strange. She sent a letter that makes her and her father a bit worried about her mental health, and she goes to visit her and her new husband in this house, this remote house, very wealthy family. And when she gets there, she realizes something's very wrong. Something's wrong with her cousin, something's wrong with the husband. She develops a relationship and a friendship with his younger brother, and eventually that does turn romantic. But there's something very wrong going on here in the house. I really, really recommend this book if you haven't read it yet. It is fantastic, but that was the one that immediately came to mind because I think it's probably the last one I read that had some kind of romance in it. Most of the books I tend to gravitate towards don't involve any whatsoever. Okay, number 7, Pondering the Pages, a horror book that stayed with you long after the last page. Okay, I went for the classic Misery by Stephen King. This was my very first Stephen King that I ever read. So Misery stayed with me for that reason, because I loved it, because it introduced that kind of horror to me, because it introduced Stephen King to me, and because it's also just super effed up at points. But again, if you're not familiar, it is about an author who crashes his car in the snow and he gets rescued by a woman who, you know, thank God she's a nurse. You know, she's able to like repair him and help him get better. And it's like, yay, that's a brilliant story, right? Well, no, because she's like his obsessed fan. And when she finds out that he's planning on killing off her main character, she goes a little bit batshit crazy. So Fantastic read again if you haven't seen it, and another amazing movie adaptation with Kathy Bates. Watch it now. Okay, 8, we have A Nightmare Fuel, a horror book that left you deeply unsettled. I went for, it's not strictly a horror book, but it's more like a dark psychological book, but to me it has horror elements. I went for The Wasp Factory by Iain Banks. If you've never read this book, it's like a what the it's just so dark and weird and haunting and creepy, and there's things with babies with maggots in its head, and what the Wasp Factory itself, and there's just a lot of darkness and creepiness to digest in this book. But essentially it centers around a psychopathic teenager, sort of from his perspective, talking about his life to that point. He has killed a couple of kids, I think 3 or something, by the time he's like 16. Yeah, it sort of explains why he is the way that he is, and yeah, it's just, yeah, nightmare fuel, as the prompt suggests. I do recommend it, though. Number 9, Cover Your Eyes, a genuinely shocking horror book. I've gone for Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk because, I mean, if you've read it, you understand. This is like a short story collection, and it's just all kinds of effed up. I never actually finished it when I read it back in the day, and I need to finish it now, which is why I've got this copy. But it is just, I remember reading it and being like, the hell? It's just that kind of read, you know. I think the cover says it all, really. That's my impression. Where would you get this kind of content? Okay, finally, a book that you recommend to everyone. The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This was a gift from my best friend, and I love this book. I mean, look, first of all, look at this bloody edition. Like, look at it. Look at the edition. It's stunning. But this introduced me to Angela Carter as a writer that I've never read before. Her writing is incredible. This book is like dark adult adaptations of kind of classic fairy tales, and also introduces you to new concepts of fairy tales. And it's just an amazing read. It's got that whole classic Gothic horror literature vibe, which I am super into, and I loved everything about this book. I think this is one of the best books that I've ever been gifted as a present. It just shows you how well my bestie knows me. Thanks, SJ. Call out to you. But that's me for now. That's my 10 questions from Alex's library. As I say, I'll link the original down below. I now have to tag people. I'm gonna go for Nakia's Hideaway. I'm gonna go for Regina's Haunted Library, and I'm gonna do for Kasha's book Cemetary. That's who I'm tagging. Ladies, get on your videos. That's me for now. If you have any answers to the questions that were posed in today's tag, please leave them down below. I always love your amazing book and horror recommendations. And that's me for now, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all that fun jazz. And I'll see you later. Bye.